Welcome to the Football Breakdown. This is the Fantasy EFL preview show and it's game week 38. I'm Matthew South.
And I'm Ian Cooper.
Yes, hello and welcome everyone to the penultimate Fantasy EFL show of the season. Pending the intriguing playoff teaser that we were given a couple of days ago by Fantasy EFL. I wonder if they're going to have anything there. But in terms of the normal game weeks, just two remaining. We're heading into a very intriguing week this weekend. But before we talk about that, how are you doing, Ian?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Pretty happy with the Easter weekend. Got a lot of points and watch a lot of good football, so it's always entertaining. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, the football was pretty good. I was pretty busy throughout most of it, but managed to catch bits here and there. My fancy week was dreadful, but the football itself was fun, so I can't really complain too much on that front. Well, should we dive into last week quickly and give ourselves a recap? I'll take us away. It was a dire 92 points for me in a double game week. Just not hitting across the board. Like players like O'Connell scoring 2 points for me after having to come off at half time in his first game for Wrexham. Like Gale didn't really do much for me for Gillingham, and my week was basically summed up, and I've said this a few times on the socials, summed up in a 2 minute period on Friday afternoon where Jack Diamond popped up in the 91st minute with a goal and an equaliser for Stockport County, and then 2 minutes later, Laurent Jalage missed a penalty. So I went from almost picking up 15, 16 points in the space of 2 minutes to only picking up five, thanks to the minus points of the penalty miss. Pretty dire. The only saving grace of my weekend was Jack Rodoni's first game against West Brom, and Vigouroux actually picked up a pretty good 9 points against Hull, but just 2 points in the game too. So yeah, just three players in the end for me on double figures and the rest in single figures.
Yeah, so I finished on 128 points. It was 133 when the game week finished, but they took away Cleworth's clean sheet. I knew it was coming. I knew they didn't keep a clean sheet, but I still had the points, so I was hoping they'd keep it there, but sadly not. One of my, proudest moments, one of the moments I was really satisfied with was picking a goalkeeper that got 2 clean sheets, and it was with Sam Tickett with Wigan. I felt like it was quite a bold choice, but for all that work and the risk of putting Tickett in, it was only 14 points, but it felt massive for me. Luckily I had 2 clean sheets as well for Harry Darling, and I had him as my captain because I used my max captainship. Actually, sorry, it wasn't 2 clean sheets. It was 1 clean sheet, and the other game he scored a goal. So with the captain, I managed to get 42 points there. Really happy with that one. And then went Oliver Casey, who got 10 points, just a lot of clearances, no clean sheets there. And then, as I said, Max Cleworth. In my midfield too, I had Lewis Wing, who did pop up with a goal and an assist in the second game, so I managed to get 20 points there. And sadly, Kieran Dowell wasn't in the squad for the first game, so I had to swap my player there. I did stick in Molineux because I had a 0.1 elsewhere, and then I didn't want to sacrifice that. So took Molineux out and put Kieran Green in as my 0.1. Absolutely gutted, because with my max captainship, I've lost out on 74 points, I believe he scored as captain. And Kieran Green got 6 points just for an interception in the first game. So not ideal. And then Michael Cheek scored a goal in the first game against Morecambe. Pretty happy with that. But then sadly didn't really contribute too much in the second game. So got 10 points there. Pretty happy with those forwards. And as for the teams, Stockport got a 1-1 draw in the first game, and I thought, oh no, don't do it again. Don't have 2 1-1 draws. Thankfully, they won the second game against Huddersfield. Made it quite difficult, especially when you see how Huddersfield are doing lately. So that was 10 points there. And as for Reading, they lost 1-0 at home to Lincoln. Definitely didn't see that one coming, but they did win 5-1 against Mansfield in the second game with the away win and 2 goals. It was 9 points, so not too bad there.
Yeah, no, decent week for yourself and for a lot of people in the league as well. Very late in the season, but if you do want to join it for the last couple of weeks, it is in the description below. I've just noticed something interesting. I haven't been keeping up with any of the Fantasy EFL news properly, so maybe this has already come out. But I just noticed looking at my team points from last week, there are two additional columns, rows, sorry. There's a progresses to final and a one
I
on
saw this.
penalties. They're both currently listed as NA because obviously we're in the regular season, but I assume that is going to hint towards what sort of points we're going to get for the playoffs coming up. So yeah, could definitely be something to look forward to then. On to this week though, and like I said at the start of the show, it's quite an interesting one because there are quite a few double game weeks in League One, and there is a triple game week. Birmingham are in a triple game week, and then we also have Blackpool, Burton, Mansfield, Peterborough, Stevenage, and Wigan all on double game weeks. So we are going to focus on that, and we're going to kind of change our structure today. Not really sure how it's going to work, but bear with us as we kind of get to grips with this. Yeah, there's so much going on that I think our focus is basically going to fall into League One, but rather than not give you, just give you four players from League One, I think what we're going to do is just kind of talk through building our teams from scratch. So yeah, the game week basically is kicking off tonight, and sometimes you can ignore that Thursday game. Well, Birmingham are playing tonight on a triple game week, so we can't really ignore the Thursday game. So tonight all the way through to next Wednesday, yeah, we're basically focusing on those 7 teams I've just mentioned. I assume, unless one of us wants to pull out someone from another club. But yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna kind of talk through our teams. So Ian, do you want to kick off this part of the show? I guess.
Yeah. Should we start with focusing on the goalkeeper for this game week? So
I think that's
yeah,
sensible. Yeah.
I've got two players that I'm considering here. I'm not looking at Ryan Alsop, which sounds might sound odd because you've got the 3 games there, but I almost don't want to waste one of the Birmingham players to put in goal, especially when you look at Birmingham's record lately. They might be scoring a lot of goals, but they just concedes the odd goal so many times when the game's almost done and they switch off. Look, if Ryan Alsop was getting subbed off in the 80th minute every game, then I'd happily put him in. But right now they concede so many goals last minute. I don't know if it's worth going there. So the 2 keepers that I'm quite interested in is Sam Tickle again for Wigan. They play Blackpool at home and then Burton Albion away. But I'm actually more favouring Max Crocombe for Burton. They have 2 home games. They've actually been pretty solid at home, and they're just above the relegation zone, and they do have the game in hand, hence why they have the double game week here. But they have the first game against Cambridge United, who are basically all but done, and then they have Wigan Athletic at home as well. And as sort of where I was going with this is, as I said last week, Wigan are really solid, but they just don't have that scoring threat at the minute. And I think with Burton really needing the result, I can see the clean sheet there, especially at home. And with that Cambridge game, they do. They're quite a strange side. They actually haven't been in terrible form, but they haven't been winning a lot of games. And I just think having to play, they basically have to win to keep their hopes alive of surviving. And Burton will know that. And I just think they're just going to try and shut up shop. And even a draw is probably not a bad result here. So I'd be looking at Max Crocombe for my goalkeeper. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm kind of on a similar thought process. I was looking at the clean sheets there. It's actually like as dominant as Birmingham have been, they've got 18 clean sheets. Well, they've got 19 clean sheets, I think it is. Allsop's got 18 of them, and Peacock Farrell has one of them. But what is interesting is Tickle also has 18 clean sheets. Okay, he's played more games than Allsop, but he's on 18, and Murphy Cooper, or Murphy Mahoney, is I think he's actually called outside of the app, is on 16 clean sheets. He's injured at the moment and not playing, but he's only two below, and he's played a similar amount of games to Allsop. So it shows that their clean sheet dominance isn't actually a thing. You know, they don't. We actually just had a look just before we started this at their recent games. There's one clean sheet in their last 8 games or something. You know, they're not really a defensive force. They're just better. They just keep the ball and they just outscore teams. But like defensively, it's not really. I'm not really looking at a goalkeeper like you say. Even though there's 3 games, I don't think that's 3 clean sheets. I can see Blackpool scoring against them. At home, they just concede silly goals late on. So I can see Mansfield almost just grabbing a late consolation goal and ruining that one. And similarly, Stevenage are stubborn enough, but they have players who could maybe just pop up with a chance. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the Tickle and Crocombe angle. I think I'm going to go with Tickle, though. I just think he's a better goalkeeper, and even though their games are tougher, I really think they have turned a corner. And under Ryan Lowe, they're just really, really stubborn at the back. I mean, they have been all season, but defensively, they are actually keeping teams out, keeping clean sheets, 4 clean sheets in 5 games, and in the majority of those games, they are keeping teams to under 10 shots a game. They played Wrexham recently, for example, and Wrexham had 4 shots against Wigan. So I do think there is an angle here that the way we're going to set up, they're just going to kind of restrict teams. And even though that Blackpool team have quite a lot of firepower, they've kind of taken the foot off the gas a little bit, and their season's basically over. I don't think they're going to be bursting a gut to try and break down that Wigan team, who are also safe. I'm pretty sure. I guess that's the risk of this. Wigan nothing to play for, Blackpool basically nothing to play for. But I think with Ryan Lowe trying to build his, you know, get those players ready for next season still, I think they're still going to put in the performances. So I think I'm going to take Tickle and as my goalkeeper. So if we move into the defence, then I guess it's probably too early to really think of a formation. I'm kind of in my head leaning to a 3-2-1. I guess to peek behind the curtain, I actually have a team built. Iain doesn't, so I'm kind of basing my thoughts off of what's in front of me. But I may well change as we go through. Maybe Iain will convince me to change to someone else. Like that Crocombe pick is interesting, for example. But yeah, I say you're just basically doing this on the spot, whereas at least I have something that I'm looking at. So
Oh
what are
yeah,
you
yeah.
thinking right now, formation wise?
So right now, I think I only want 2 defenders, mainly because I want to use my Birmingham players in midfield and forward selections. So I just feel like if I'm doing that, if I'd had a 3-2-1, I've only got one more midfield option outside of Birmingham, and I've got to pick 3 defenders that have a double game week that aren't playing for Birmingham. And with 3 defenders, especially with such a small pool of teams that have a double game week, I think you're so tempted to double commit to a team where, so then if that goes against you, you really hurt yourself there. That's kind of why I wanted a Burton keeper in goal, because I'm looking at a Wigan defender, and then I'll find a defender from possibly another team. I might go someone like Casey from Blackpool, who's quite high scoring, or even Piergiani for Stevenage. He pops up with the goals. They are defensively solid. They have 2 home games. Okay, one of them is Birmingham, but the other one's Rotherham, who have stops free scoring there. So I'd be looking at 2 defenders personally, but I can see why you're going for the 3.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, it's tough trying to think of the defenders because part of me wants to avoid the ones playing Birmingham, and there are some good choices in there. But then, like if you take Piergiani for example, he in games that they've lost, he's picked up 7 points against Wickham. I'm basically trying to pick out stuff where he doesn't have a goal contribution or a clean
Yes.
sheet. So 7 points against Wickham thanks to clearances and tackles. Okay, just 3 points against Stockport. with the minus for goals. Against Leyton Orient, 6 points thanks to 13 clearances. He does have a lot of games where he has a goal or an assist
Oh
going
yeah,
his
no,
way.
it's not an anomaly. It does happen quite a
Yeah,
lot.
but like Mansfield, they concede there, they draw the game at 1-1, but 12 clearances, 4 tackles. He does get decent point returns without goal contributions as well. So he's definitely in consideration. I think the first player I'm going to bring to the table, though, is Ryan Sweeney for Burton, which is why I kind of saved my Burton pick for defence. Sweeney missed a couple of games there, but he's back and he came back with 8 points against Exeter, 6 points against Birmingham. Perfect example there. They lost 2-1 to Birmingham and he got 6 points. So we know that he's going to contribute 12 clearances in that game, 3 tackles. Like you said, the Burton games against Cambridge and Wickham, I can actually see 2 clean sheet chances here. I really think that Wickham Burton game could be a 0-0. I think there's a scenario where Burton will just need a point to confirm their survival, and they'll just play for it. And Wigan, we know what Wigan are like. They're a low scoring team. I really think that game could be a 0-0, and I'd almost be willing to just put money on that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm happy to go Wigan and Burton defenders, goalkeepers here, and just take on that game. 322 clearances in 40 appearances for Sweeney. That's a 6.4 average clearances. Over 8 clearances average, 6.4 point average. He's only missed 3 games this season. Expecting to play both games. Expecting to start both games, key part of their defence. I do like the look of Sweeney to start off my defence.
Okay, so yeah, we've got the same thought, but we've just gone opposites because I want Jason Kerr as my defender just for his defensive actions. I just think they're high. His average points is 6.6. I just think that's just too high to ignore, especially because they're the team that don't have to play Birmingham. Like he's had 316 clearances. So when I'm comparing him to sort of Will Aimson, he has 100 clearances less. So just to get those extra points, it makes sense to go Jason Kerr there. So I'm looking at Kerr and Piergiani as my defensive pairing here.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I am actually looking to bring in, I know you're not going to touch the Birmingham defender, but I'm going to look to bring in Clara. And the reason I'm going to look to bring in Clara is something we mentioned before we started this show, and it's Birmingham rotation. I don't think their midfielders who start every game give you enough points. So I'm going to take Clara as the one playing 3 games, the one who I expect to start and play pretty much 270 minutes in the next week. He's the 4th top scoring defender. Okay, it's behind Piergiani and Kerr, and Casey, but I think it's still like a good, a very very good points return. 40 games all season, so he's only missed 1 game for Birmingham. And that was game week 21 against Burton. So yeah, no issues of him not playing all 3 games here. He's a really consistent point scorer, 6.4 point average. He's quite well selected, but yeah, Clara's where I'm looking to get my first Birmingham player in, just because I'm wary of their rotation further up the pitch. Basically, one player who I do like, I think I've used him before, tried to use him before. I like the look of is Gardner Hickman, but he's just such a culprit for the rotation. He missed quite a few games recently. Came back with 14 points with a goal and an assist against Peterborough. He's counting as a defender. He's basically playing further forward for them. But then 20 minutes against Crawley, and then he comes back and gets 7 points against Burton, thanks to a clean sheet, and he's subbed off after the hour mark again. So you can't really rely on that over 3 games because, sure, like, okay, if I'm going to pick a player and he's going to score 22 points in 3 games, I'm not going to be too disappointed. But at the same time, I still think you're leaving points on the board there, as in, like, I just think someone who's more consistent will get you more points.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And did you have anyone else that you were considering in defence if you were looking at your 3 defenders then?
I do. I have one more player, but this is where I'm angling my sub point one pick. it kind of fits the narrative of what we've talked about, which is, you know, defenders with some decent clearance numbers playing for one of the teams who A don't play Birmingham, and B have pretty good defensive records. Yeah, the player that I'm eyeing up is James Carragher for Wigan. He's had a pretty good season so far. He's 0.1% selected. It's a 5.5 point average. He's off the back of a goal against Rotherham, but even without the goal, he would have scored 18 points. Sorry, 11 points in that game. In comparison, you know, like Kerr only scored 8. Aimson only scored 8. So to get someone who would have scored 11 and then plus scored a goal and got 18 points, you know, I think there's a good angle there for Carragher to show that he's not just scoring highly when he scores goals. You know, he's only got a couple of goals all season, but he actually returns 8 points pretty consistently. If I look at his recent games, 3 of his last 5 games have seen him score 8 points bang on. Scored 6 points and 18 points in the other two. If you go a little bit further back as well, he has exceeded his 5.5 average pretty much most weeks, bar 2 in his last 10 games. So, yeah, he's someone who I'm eyeing up as that 0.1 pick.
Okay, yeah, no, so that's something that I've not looked at zero point 0.1 yet. I was just checking if Kieran Dowell was still zero point 0.1, but sadly he's 0.2. I'm still considering him as my midfield pick. With I know like we said, he can be subject to that rotation, but he definitely does enough when he is in the team to almost compensate that. So take last game week, for instance, when I opted for Kieran Green instead of him. He didn't play the first game, but the second game he goes and gets 2 assists, 2 key passes, and gets 9 points just from that one game, which is more than what my other midfielder got for the double game week. So still interested to get him in there, because especially with 0.1 players, like the temptation is to go for a Birmingham one, but you kind of need the big hitters if you're going to commit down that way. I don't see the point of going for a 0.1 for a triple game week when with their rotation being quite heavy anyway, you're going to opt for more of a squad player at 0.1%, and you're just not going to get the sort of output you need there. So I would, especially for the 0.1 for us, I would stay clear of the Birmingham players.
Yeah, and just to add to Dowell, actually, you know, it's an interesting angle. Sorry, if we do move into midfield, I'll just talk about Kieran Dowell quickly. Obviously, the last few games, you know, he was rested against Peterborough, so didn't play in that one. But he was shocking in the cup final, so I have a feeling that's why he wasn't picked against Crawley, because he was. I
Yeah.
mean, they were all pretty bad, but he was especially bad in that cup final. So he bounced back against Burton with those 2 assists. And if you have a little look back, you know, game week 34, double game week, starts both, assists in both. Game week 31, double game week, scores in both games, starts both games. You know, game week 30 starts both games, but a bit quieter, just 2 points. Game week 29, double game week. 5 points thanks to an interception, and then an assist, starts both games. So he's someone who, you know, should be starting two of the 3 games at least. Not too, like, you know, if you are worried about the rotation on him, well, there's data to go off of to show that he should play, you know, should be playing in these double game weeks. He's someone who is almost above the rotation, not quite, but you know, he's not. You know, we're not talking about, you know, Alfie May playing every other game here. Like, this is Kieran Dowell playing the majority of the games right now. So, yeah, the fact he was back in at the weekend, I feel like, or sorry, on Monday, I feel like he should be playing, starting 2, maybe 3. He'll feature in all 3. I can see him hitting the 200-minute mark easily. So, yeah, just my thoughts on Dowell, though I am saving my Birmingham pick for later.
Yeah, so when we carry on with midfielders, out of the 7 teams that have more than one game this game week, is there any teams that you feel you would just avoid, just to sort of like not consider them for this week?
I It sounds harsh. I'm going to say Stevenage, just because it's really tough to pick a player for them in terms of fantasy. I actually think they're a really solid outfit, and I really, really like them. But when it comes to trying to pick someone for fantasy, their top scorer midfielder is Dan Kemp. He scored against Crawley a few games ago. But in his last 5 games, he didn't play against Bristol Rovers the other day, so that is a worry as well. His last 5 games, he's produced 4 of them have produced absolutely nothing. So it's like the deviation, like your points average, your deviation from that, he could score big, but when your fixtures are Birmingham and Rotherham, and that Rotherham team have been, a bit like they've been ending the season quite well. Their manager's been given the full-time job. I think they might try and end the season, with something to show going into next season. Could be a tough game, and I just wonder, like, there's just no standout player for them that I'm going to pull in. It's similar with Mansfield as well for me. I'd really struggle to just pick a player out, and it's actually less against the team themselves. It's just who they're like. Louis Reed's just had a good couple of weeks, but that's thanks to assists. He has 3 assists, and 2 of them came in his last 2 games. Like, is that going to keep up? I don't think they really look that big an attacking threat. I know they've actually scored quite a few goals recently, but I don't really know where you angle that one. So they're the 2 teams that I'm kind of cautious of in the midfield and the forward list anyway.
Yeah, because I was just looking at midfielders there when you were talking. Because I saw they have really tough fixtures with Birmingham and Peterborough, who are scoring at the minute. So I was looking at, maybe they have a midfielder that's got a good interception rate, and sadly it's Louis Reed, who is their highest interceptions this season as well, with 31 in 38 games. So it's under an interception a game. And like you said, so I wanted to check, do they stack up there when he does get interceptions? Are they adding up to 2-3 a game? And his last 2 games against Rotherham and Reading, especially that Reading game where you feel like they wouldn't have a lot of the ball, and they were certainly against the play. He only got 1 interception. His points recently have just been coming from assists. He averages that 1 interception a game, but if you don't get the assist, it's just not worth the inclusion there, sadly. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. It's Stevenage, Mansfield, especially for midfielders here. I just don't see the value being there.
Yeah. And not to contradict myself, but if I did have to throw someone out there, I'd eye up George Maris for Mansfield. 2 shots a game, has a couple of goals on the season, had a pretty good back-to-back game returning off the bench against Orient after injury, I think it was. He scored, started against Rotherham, scored, did nothing against Reading, but Mansfield were rubbish all around against Reading. But he's more of the attacking threat from midfield. That's almost the angle I'd take, because like you say, the interception numbers are low. So if you're going to angle somewhere, maybe angle for an attacking midfielder, which would land you on Maris. Not a bad option for sure, but again, one of those players who, if he doesn't score, he's not getting you any points. So it just depends how much you think Mansfield and him have a chance of scoring in their 2 games.
Yeah, so for midfielders here, it does seem like there's quite a consideration for actually looking for forward-thinking midfielders, goal-scoring midfielders, almost wingers that are selected as midfielders here. So is it the same case as the last couple of weeks with Molyneux, that you just look at Pokey?
I think it has to be. I think you have to look at Pokey this week. They, Peterborough, okay, he's not scored in his last 2 games, but scored against Birmingham, his 2 assists in his massive haul against Crawley. Scored in a really good haul against Reading as well. If you ignore like the Northampton game, they were terrible. Stockport are a good side. That Barnsley game, fine, fair enough. He can't score every game. Game at home to Bolton and away to Mansfield. Like, if you look at this, Bolton's season has basically just ended. Yeah. They are conceding goals. The Schumacher can't shore up that defence right now. They're just a bit sloppy all over the place, and they've just conceded 4 goals to a Lincoln side who are kind of in that similar realm of Peterborough. Have had nothing to play for a while. the season's kind of disappointed compared to where they were last season. But hey, let's end the season well, and they put 4 past Bolton. I think Peterborough could do something similar, and you'd expect Poku to be central to that. Similarly, their next game is away to Mansfield. A Mansfield side who just conceded 5 goals to Reading. Well, yeah, I want to get against them. I want to get against that defence. And it's not just the 5 goals to Reading, 3 goals to Rotherham, 3 goals to Leyton Orient, 2 to Huddersfield and Shelton. You know, they're conceding a lot of goals. So attacking, thinking midfielder, well, it just lands you on Poku for Peterborough.
And should we move on to another pod favourite and EFL fantasy favourite? What are your opinions on Albie Morgan for this week? Consistent point scorer, but I'd argue not an ideal set of fixtures, being Wigan away and then Birmingham at home.
No, but I like the look of Morgan this week because he's a consistent point scorer, and there's, I guess, a couple of angles here. You know, I've gone, you know, heavy in the Wigan defence, so maybe I don't want Morgan to be the one scoring, but still, I guess you can still lean into that interception thing for him. You know, we've said before it's like a two-man midfield with him and Evans, so there's always chances of interceptions. I think the Wigan game can be quite scrappy. You know, we've seen how Ryan Lowe sides play, and when they're good, it's ball on the floor and play football. But surely that just leads to more interception chances, right? Birmingham, okay, so it's all, you know, pass and move. It's the interception chances are tough because it's, you know, they don't waste the ball. But you'd still think that maybe at Blackpool there's an angle here for Morgan to get interceptions, and with that also being Birmingham's last game of their triple game week, could they capitalise on a tired Birmingham? Is that going to open it up here? We know Birmingham can see goals. You know, like Poku scored against Birmingham. In fact, there's like a lot of the goals are conceded kind of from these players, these like midfielders who score goals. So I do think there is definitely an angle for Morgan and Poku. I know it just sounds like, you know, it's the low hanging fruit option, but it is definitely the option that I'm favouring here.
And have you got any more midfielders that you're considering, or are you sort of done? Because I feel fairly done unless I'm going to come back for a zero point 0.1 of just having Poku and Dow as my midfielders.
I'd say I'm going to go Poku and Morgan for mine. I think that if I was to suggest anyone else, just to throw names out there, I think maybe one of the Burton midfielders, given their fixtures, 2 games at home.
So I was going to just say there that before he got the red card, he was in a really good run of form, and it was Charlie Webster who I was looking at.
Yes, I think I've opted for my 0.1 pick before, and he's got a few good returns in there. But obviously, that red card against Wrexham, you know, after 10 minutes just leaves it there. But the game before that, goal and assist at home to Leyton Orient, you know, away from him, maybe JJ McKinnon, a very talented player, but doesn't quite get you the points because he doesn't necessarily have the consistency. Yeah, Webster definitely the option, I'd say, for Burton, but not strong enough for me to want to put him in ahead of Morgan.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you there. So then going into the forward picks, I'll save the Birmingham player that we're all thinking for you. So what I've done here is I've got myself in a predicament. If I don't change my team, I need to go find a 0.1% player. And I do have a couple of options. Maybe it's not the way to go, but the ones that I'm missing out on, Mothersill, Lee Gregory, Jordan Rhodes somehow, Ricky J. Jones, Roman Burrell, which is really frustrating because he's on a bit of a scoring spree. Okay, didn't score my last 2 games, but I've really liked him. I think I mentioned him a couple of months ago. Another quite frustrating player. I do want a Blackpool player somehow, but Rob Apter's just come off of 4 goals in 2 games with a hat-trick against Stevenage away from home, which just seems ridiculous. But I can't opt for him at the minute. So I'm sort of between players like Ashley Fletcher, hasn't been scoring too much lately, but did get 3 assists for the Rob Apter's goals away to Stevenage. Another player is Abraham Odo. Very inconsistent, but I want I don't know if I want to go double Peterborough here, but I do feel he is a talent. He's frustrating. He should be scoring more and scoring more points, but it's that hat trick against Crawley that's just so tempting. Especially like you say, they're playing against a poor Mansfield sides and a Bolton side who Schumacher's openly said he's frustrated with. I don't know if you actually saw the comments, a bit off topic, but they asked him about a rebuild in the summer, and Steven Schumacher's response was, well, nearly all these players are in contract for next season, so there's not really much they can do over the summer. I don't know if that's an ideal statement to say before the season's even done, but maybe a fun angle to go down there. Looking at other players, there's one player who plays for Birmingham, who I might be contradicted here, who is 0% picked, and I really like him. He has games where he genuinely looks the best player for this Birmingham side, but doesn't play all so often. It's Keshi Anderson.
Yeah, he's a frustrating player for fantasy because he doesn't have the consistency, and you don't know where he's going to play, for example. And
No.
I feel like there was a time in the season where they were playing like a free back and he was at wing back.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre. And then it's like, well, do you want a forward who's going to play so deep? I feel like his issue as well is, this might seem a bit harsh, but if you look down at some of the games where Birmingham have dominated, his points aren't really there. Whereas if you look at some of the games where they've had tougher fixtures, Bristol Rovers gave them a really good game and Anderson scored in that one. Northampton gave them a really good game, drew 1-1, Anderson scored. Whereas you look at some of the wins, Anderson's not really doing too much. Like they scored 4 goals against Cambridge and Anderson just gets an assist. Or it's quite hard to really predict, but games where they seem to have a bit more of a battle, where he can kind of come up with like a bit more, he can actually use his pace and ability, whereas when they're kind of just passing the ball side to side, you kind of just nullify the threat of Anderson, if that makes sense. I don't know if that kind of comes into the thinking, like maybe over 3 games, your best bets are the Blackpool and Stevenage games, where you think Anderson might actually have a use in those games, whereas at home to Mansfield, it's almost like, well, if Mansfield just sit back and try and eke out a result, then his threat kind of isn't as great.
Yeah, and the other striker I had here is Dom Dwyer, who we've mentioned. But with those 2 games, like you said, Mansfield rarely go a game without scoring. They're very consistent at scoring 1 goal. But am I willing to select him, hoping that he's going to be the player that scores that 1 goal? I'm just not quite up for committing to that avenue. So just looking here, I think I want to go. I'm between Odo or either of the Blackpool strikers, Fletcher or Ennis. I'm not quite sure yet, so I'll leave you to talk about your Birmingham picks, and I'll come back to you on that one.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take Stansfield up front, and I think it's a must this week. I think if you look, it's 3 goals in 4 starts for him. Yeah, it is 3 goals in 4 starts for him. He came off the bench in the Peterborough game, so I'm not going to count that. Well, obviously, it isn't a start. I think they're going to try and... It's like what do Birmingham have left to play for? Well, they have 2 things, really. They have the points record, which they're well within reach of getting, and they have the Jay Stansfield Golden Boot. So there's part of me that just thinks they're good enough here to just kind of play towards the latter as well and try and get that done. I don't see why they wouldn't. So I just think he's just too good to leave out this week, especially on a triple game week. You're someone with 19 goals in 33 games, you just have to take on a triple. Listen, you can go May as well if you want to go May. I think May is unfortunately the biggest culprit for rotation. So Look at that. May scores 2 goals off the bench against Shrewsbury, is rewarded with a 12-minute cameo against Bristol Rovers. Then he gets a start against Barnsley, 2 goals, 2 assists, subbed after 53 minutes. Scores against Peterborough the next game. Does get a start against Crawley, immediately then dropped against Burton. So the rotation for him is too big an issue in my eyes to kind of take him over Stansfield, which is why Stansfield's the one for me. Just looking like anyone else, like Motherstill's got a good points return this season. He fits into that Peterborough thing, but I think I'm going to stick on Poku, and I will add an outside pick as well. That I kind of like the look of, but is very risky. It's Malaise Asamoah for Wigan. The youngster, he is Derek Asamoah's son, I think. He has now scored and got 2 assists for Wigan, and he's kind of like worked his way into the starting 11 for them. In fact, he started the last 4 games, I think it is, and in those 4 games, he's grabbed 2 assists. He's grabbed some bonus points for shots on target. He is quick. He is very, very quick. He does look creative. He does look exciting. He's maybe too raw for the consistency on this type of thing, and it kind of falls into the, do we think Wigan are going to have enough chances at scoring goals and kind of taking them defensively this week rather than going forward? But you do have Dale Taylor there as well, who is a perfectly capable striker to finish off those chances. So yeah, just a complete rogue outside shout, Asamoah for Wigan.
Right, yeah, lovely. Yeah, obviously, naturally, I've got Stansfield as well. And actually, been talking, I've worked my way back. I've gone to look at midfielders at a zero point 0.1, and now I'm currently on defenders. So I'm sort of going against what I said with having 3 defenders. But I think for the zero point 0.1, actually, it does make, in my head, it makes more sense where it's kind of the team that does the heavy lifting for your player to get points, where when you go to midfield and especially forward, it's them individually that need to perform to get the points. So I am currently looking at maybe a Wigan defender, or tell you who is an option here instead of Gianni, but sadly his points really come from clean sheets, really, and it's Charlie Good, Stevenage. I'm looking at the results where he doesn't get a clean sheet and they don't get the win. So for Birmingham, where they won 2-1, he got 5 points for 12 clearances. When they drew 1-1 to Reading, he got 11 clearances. They lost 1-0 to Wickham, 13 clearances, 3 blocks, 7 points. And then when they do get the clean sheet, 14 clearances, 1 clean sheet, 11 points against Bristol Rovers. Not too bad, but look, if they're going to be playing against Birmingham, I'm kind of sacrificing the clean sheet there. So I'm just aiming for a lot of clearances there and then a clean sheet for the Rotherham game. So I'm just a little bit stuck here at the minute.
Yeah, it is definitely a tough week for it. I picked out Carragher yesterday, and I've just been praying that he would stay at zero point 0.1 coming into today. Just like off the back of a good week, I thought like he's a very easy player to pick, but I think there is more to it than him just scoring a goal for him to be a good pick, which is why I've gone with him. But it also, yeah, there was the worry that we'd start this pod and he'd already be zero point 0.2 and I'd have to pick someone else. So I'm just glad he stayed. Yeah, there's some interesting options in defence. Like you say, though, it's at what cost do you make the pick? Gianni just has like such better stats than Good that it's like it just feels like or is it almost like too costly a swap? But then if Good does perform and like you say they get the clean sheets, then you're probably not going to be too disappointed in it.
No, I'm currently looking at a cheeky Peterborough player to add into the defence, which is just terrifying. So I'm already trying to sort of get my way away from that. There is players that I would have liked to pick, but frustratingly they are all one player that is back from suspension who got a red card against Northampton, has served his 3-game ban, and that's Teo Eden. Pretty sure he plays left back for them or he plays midfield. He's listed as a defender on the game here. some really good results. Like when they got the clean. Actually, maybe not. I was looking, he's just served his red card. I was going a few games back. I was like, okay, 4 points against Crawley, 3-4, fair enough. Conceded 3 goals to Reading, 2 points. Okay, I can understand that. When I saw 14 points against Cambridge for a clean sheet, I was like, wow, here we go. Let's have a look at this. Scored a goal, got a clean sheet, but also got a red card. So if I'm seeing 2 red cards in the last 7 games, maybe I'm opting out of him here. Wow, I am really stretching for this one player.
Yeah, just having a look there, see if I can see if Teo Eden's ban is longer than 3 games or not, given it's his second red in a short space of time, but I can't find anything. So, you any closer on your 0.1% pick?
Yeah, so I'm between 3. I'm between getting Charlie Webster back in, assuming that he goes straight back into the lineup. But with you, I do see them playing almost for 2 0-0s here that just really help them. So going away from that one, I did look at Sonny Carey, but he missed Monday's game. Just looked at why, and he is having a medical tomorrow to see if he's fit for the game on the weekend. That just doesn't sound that promising, especially when you've got a double game week. I need them to play both games. So if someone's not even trained this week and might be back to training tomorrow, it's too much of a gamble. So I am going to go for Abraham Odo for Peterborough up front. I'm going with 2 forwards. When Odo is on and scoring, he actually gets quite good returns. Okay, got 1 assist and key passes last game against Barnsley. Let's ignore the hat-trick because that's just far too appealing with 25 points. But the 3-0 win against Charlton, which shouldn't be ignored, 1 goal, 2 shots on target, 2 key passes. Got an assist against Wickham as well. So he does it in the big games. I'm just trying to convince myself here. 2 assists in Game Week 30 against Shrewsbury. Like, when he's certainly performing much better than he did sort of from the start of the season, where if you look at his point returns, they are just genuinely 1 point and the occasional 2 points. And he has been starting every game in 2025 on that left-hand side. So why not have both wingers in Odo and Poku, and let's just hope they can combine.
Yep, no, it sounds like a good shout to me. So what does your final team look like then?
Well, this is probably why we don't do it live. I'm looking at it. I do enjoy it, but it's probably not the team I would have gone for exactly if I had prepared it before. So I've gone for Max Krokum in goal, Jason Kerr and Carl Piagiani in defence, Quayne Poku, Kieran Dowell in midfield, and Stansfield and Odo up front.
Nice. So I have Tickle in goal, Clara, Carragher, Sweeney as my defence, Poku and Morgan in midfield, and Stansfield up top. So then it brings us on to the last part of the show this week, which is our teams to win. So have you given any thought to who you want to pick this week? I mean, we already know one of the teams, so I guess it's just who do you want to pick as your second team?
Yeah, and it does feel like I never like picking the 2 double game week teams that play each other. So I'm sort of looking at this like, how do I avoid playing against Birmingham? And I think I'm going to opt for Peterborough. As mentioned, I just don't think Bolton are in a great place at the minute. So to have them at home's probably the ideal occasion here. I know both teams aren't necessarily playing for a lot, but Peterborough still seem like they are performing for the manager. Like they're currently in good form. They are certainly enjoying their EFL Trophy win, so going for that, and then the away game to Mansfield. I just think it's ideal for a really goal potent team to go away there. So I'm going to go for Peterborough as my other team. Obviously, the first team is Birmingham.
Yeah, I was actually really torn between Peterborough and another team, and I currently have the other team in place. Oh, Peterborough are so tempting, but I might stick with my guns. I'm gonna take Burton double home. I think they will beat Cambridge and then draw 0-0 with Wigan, and that 0-0 draw 5 points. I'll take it as long as they can beat Cambridge.
Yeah, so
Saturday.
I had Burton covered until I've literally just taken them out. The only reason I've done that for is I'm just terrified of those 1-1 draws, and as much as I can see both these games being a 1-0 or a 0-0, I can quite easily see it being a 1-1 as well, where I'd rather at least go for, in my opinion, the Peterborough game against Mansfield is getting the 9 points there, hopefully. So then that Bolton game's almost more of a free hit for me. That's sort of my thinking there.
I think that away game against Mansfield is just too big to ignore. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to take Peterborough as well, purely the away point. In my head, I'm there. Like if I'm thinking that really Burton are going to get me 12 points, maybe 14. I think Peterborough could go and easily get 9, maybe 11 from the Mansfield game, and then a win or a draw against Bolton puts me in the same position. So I think it does make sense then to go with Peterborough. Just in my thoughts of what I think they can actually score this week is probably higher than what Burton can score. And that brings us to the end of the show. So yeah, please do follow us on the socials though. We are on X at FBBD Pod, and we are on Bluesky at Football Breakdown. We'll have a full image of our teams before the weekend. There is a game tonight though, so Stevenage versus Birmingham. Be aware of that, everyone. Don't miss out on the chance to get Birmingham in this triple game week. Thank you all for listening. We'll join you next week for the final week of the season. Thank you, Iain.
Thank you, Matthew.
And take it easy.